here, back with another great experiment for you. Today we're going to mix a little bit of science experiments with a little bit of arts and crafts. So first things first, let's go through the experiment materials. So first things first, you want to get a container that you can use in the microwave. So I have just a glass container here, some white vinegar, food coloring, your choice of food coloring, a spoon, some paper towels, we'll need that to soak up some moisture later, paper towels, a fork. This is a ring mold, so you can have a heart mold, a star mold, a moon mold, a mold, a bear mold, all kind of molds. And if you don't have a mold, you can just use a ball or a spoon and a fork. We'll get to that a little bit later. Milk does the body good. Just any kind of milk works. Just get you some cheapo 47-cent milk. Milk, a strainer to strain liquids, and then something for that liquid to go into. So a bowl or a cup or a pot, whatever that's convenient for you. Just make sure that the strainer can easily rest on top like that. Makes everything easier. Some parchment paper. So this is some cooking paper. This is optional. You don't have to have this. This just makes things easier later when we're wanting to get our hands on and doing the hands-on arts and crafts. But first things first, let's talk about this science behind all of the experiment that we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing a great reaction. This reaction is commonly called milk plastic or milk rock or milk mold or milk structure or any kind of milk. So what we're doing here, we're going to focus on a key protein in milk. So proteins are very, very great for building muscle, and we need proteins in our body and in our diet. We get proteins from milk, we get protein from plants, we get protein from animals, beef products, and vegetables. The milk protein that we're focusing on today is casein. So casein is a very cool compound, especially once we start getting really experimental in adding another liquid to it. So this is acid, acetic acid. Remember that from last time. So this vinegar is going to mix in with our milk here. But first things first, we have to practice safe science. So make sure that you are in a safe area. You have supervision of an adult. And we also want to make sure we're practicing safe science. So we want to make sure we do not eat in science. Yes, this is milk that you put in cereal and we eat all the time or drink all the time. But we do not eat this. We're not eating the final product either. Even though this vinegar is edible. We use it for cooking. We use it for cleaning. But we do not want to eat our experiments. Do not eat our experiments. All right, so first things first, we're going to take our container that's going to go in the microwave, our microwavable container, and we're going to add 400 milliliters to our container. 400 milliliters, boop, 400 milliliters. And if you don't know what a milliliter is, take this time to research what a milliliter is. In science, we use the metric scale, and you can see right here, milliliters, 400 milliliters there, and see what 1 cup converts to milliliters. How many milliliters is in 1 cup? Research it. All right, a little bit of homework for you. Now that we have our milk, what we're going to do is we could go ahead and do this experiment right away and just add in the vinegar. But first we want to think about how this milk is. This milk has been refrigerated. So the molecules have slowed down as far as energy goes. There's not been a lot of heat to them. They've become really stable. And what happens is they have come to a really slow state. Now what we want to do is warm them up by taking this and putting it in the microwave. And putting it in the microwave will energize our liquid. So remember, we got our liquid wiggles. But then liquid's still gonna wiggle, but we can add energy to it. And the more energy energy we add to this, it will then evaporate then some water that's in there, but that just tells us that it's getting to more of an excited state, and all the liquid is just breaking apart really, really fast because we're putting so much heat and energy into it. So the liquid's kind of cool and just chilling right now. It's kind of like nobody's jumping in the pool, and then suddenly 10 people do cannonballs and splash, 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 splash. That's like putting milk into the microwave and how all the water starts to get excited and really, 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 really rampant, and then eventually evaporate or splash out of the pool and this, that, and the third. So, movie magic, let's heat this up. Boom! We're back. So, this obviously is now warm, and you can see all of the steam rising up, rising up. I'll show you a little closer. You can see a little steam action. Steam. Steam! And there's some condensation around the inside here, because remember, those warm molecules are rising, but it's still cooling down on the side of this glass, so it condenses because this glass is cold, but still all these other warm molecules are rising up, mostly water, because the casein, the protein that we're about to focus on, is heavy. It's kind of like that nursery rhyme, the little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet eating her curds and whey. We are going to separate the protein using acetic acid. So this is a separation experiment. We are going to first, if you have food coloring, add a little food color, add a little color. I chose purple today. Purple. Let's go on, because the milk is really, really thick. So we want to make sure it's nice and nice color purple. Color purple for the color purple fans. Alright, now we have purple milk. Purple milk. It's the color purple milk. Alright, so now we have our milk. So we now want to take our acetic acid, and what this is going to do is separate our protein from our other liquid and our milk. So we're going to take our spoon, we're going to do 4 tablespoons of vinegar, 4 tablespoons of vinegar, and then we're going to immediately stir. Stir. Tomato, potato. All right, here we go. 1, and 2, and 2, and 3, and 3, and 4, and 4. No more than 4. Alright, so now you'll see it already starting to curd up. And look at that! Ah, science! Gotta love it. Look at all this thickness, y'all. All of this is protein. Casein. This is the actual plastic rock mold. This is what we're going to strain out of our liquid. But we want to make sure we do this for about 2 minutes. Also, the liquid was in the microwave for 2 minutes. 2 minutes. We want to make sure we get all of our solids off of the sides as much as possible, because the more solids we have, the more solids we can mold with. And get that nice and stir. And you can see it's starting to separate. I think that's good. Let's move this over here. Now, it's going to be a lot of liquid coming out at first, but that's cool. That's what we want. We want to make sure we get all the liquid out as much as possible. Just take a strainer and just strain away. Strain away. Strain away. Strain away. Strain away. And you can see all the solids. Look at all that. Drip, drip, drip. Drip, drip, drip. Drip, drip, drip. Ooh, got a little man drip like this. Now you want to take a spoon and just kind of push that liquid through as much as possible. And you want to just push. Push it real good. Push it down on in there. You want to strain out as much vinegar as possible. We do not want a stinky smelling vinegary mold, especially if we want to use this as a gift to someone, or a paperweight, or a keychain, or whatever you want to use your mold for. But you just want to push it all out. And you can see it's starting to come. You want to push it through. Don't push it through. Just Just strain it out. That's what we have the paper towel for. The paper towel is going to allow us to damp it down a little bit further. Damp it down. Damp it down. And just like that. And you can kind of just fold it over a little bit. Fold it in. Because there's still some liquid probably still wedged down within the casing or plastic or whatever you want to call it. Mold or cheese. Cottage cheese looking substance. There it goes. Drip, drip, drip. Got a little money to drip like this. Go, drip, drip, drip. Some more drip, drip, drip. And get all that drip out as much as possible. Because the less you have dripping, and you can do this too, kind of scrape around them at the bottom. Don't want to waste that, so tap it right back on top. Alright, so now you have sufficiently drained it as much as possible with your container and your sift here, or strainer. We want to now transfer. Put this to the side, transfer to your cloth. Transfer to your cloth. Cloth, tablecloth, paper towel, whatso have you. This right here, let's go ahead and double it up. Double it up. Let's do that. Let's just keep it how it was. Boom. Then you just fold it over, put that to the side. Now we have our mold. This is the beginning of what you want to create. You can use any kind of mold. You can split this in half for the next part, which is what I'm going to do, because there's a few ways you can do this part. The next part, you first want to just pat out all that extra liquid, the excess vinegar. If you have a separate paper towel, just don't be shy. Just go ahead and use that too. Don't be shy either. Get your hands nice and dirty. It's just vinegar. It's just milk. It's just casein. It's not going to hurt you. All of this is edible. We put it in our body. We can touch it. So now, let's go ahead and damp that out. Don't be too rough with it because it'll then get like clumpy and you'll have all type of crumbles all over the place. It's good to just keep it in the mold that you have, just like that. And yeah, there'll be bits that fly out, but that's cool. We're going to have it all molded together here in a second anyway, once we get our parchment paper. So once this one paper towel is nice and saturated, saturated meaning wet, very wet, because when we first started it was dry. It was not saturated. There we go. Now we'll take this just to double up and make sure. So now I'll open this up so you can see all the extra liquid that was removed from our mixture there, all that. Set this to the side for recycling. Recycle. And now, make sure just in case you don't have any, you want to take this and you can split it in half now. If you want to go ahead and start molding it with your mold, you can go ahead and break it out and piece it that way. I'm going to do half and half because I have another way you can do this. If you want to create something a little bit more flat, if you have no mold. And this right here is just a simple ring of a lid of a jar that I had. You can find something simple like that, like a can. Get creative. Find all different shapes and sizes in the kitchen, and different things of appliances and such like that. So let's move our milk out of the way, and we do not want our vinegar to spill at all. So what we're going to do is take our parchment paper, and take half of that, put it there. Parchment paper on one half, and then the other half. Actually, let's get a little bit more. A little bit more. Now we have that there. Cool. We'll leave that there for a second. First, if you're doing the parchment paper method, let's go ahead and get this folded in half. You're going to put your, y'all see this? Put this in the center of your paper, parchment paper. It doesn't matter what it looks like. You can kind of push and feel it. If you haven't felt it yet, make sure you get a feel for it and see how solidified it is. But fold it in half, just push down on it. like that. Take a spoon or any type of handle or something, just kind of use that to spread it on out. Spread it on out. Spread it on out. There we go. Just so I can see a little bit better. You can use your hand too to kind of press down on it. What we're doing is just kind of moving these to the sides to kind of make it into more of a flat surface instead of this lump or mold that we have here. No lumps. Just kind of smooth it on out. Smooth it on out. Smooth it on out. Press down upon it. And you can feel it starting to kind of even out. Can y'all see that a little bit better? So now it's starting to be flat. So now it's flatter. See? Now I've pressed it out. Just press it out. Keep on pressing and rolling. Rolling. There we go. You do that. Yep. Right. And you can do this as thin as you like. I'm gonna go a little bit more. I don't mind it to be nice, relatively thin, but not too thin. Because what we're gonna do with this is two different things you can do. You want to either, well, first let's think about this. This eventually is going to solidify. It's already a solid. You can see here, I'll pull it up. It's kind of got this sheen look to it. You see that? It's kind of got that sheen look. There we go. Now this right here, this is what we can use to use as our ring mold, kind of press out and stamp out what we want our plastic to be. That's why I said if you want to do molds, it's good to have a thicker block like this if you want to do it like a mold and shape it into the mold there. But if you're not doing a mold, you can do this and you can use a knife or a fork. Remember, make sure you have supervision of an adult if you don't know how to use a knife properly, or if you're not of age, use a knife. But this one, what I'll do is, let's go ahead and take this and punch out a ring mold. Well, this part right here is a little, but you want to make sure that all of your solids are contacted with one another. And if not, just kind of fold it over and just press it in. Because the top right here, as you can tell, I'll show you, bring it up so you can see. So the top is a little bit more crumbly, and down at the bottom, it's a little bit more flat. All right, let's do this. So fold that over. Let's do it like this. There we go. Press down. Make sure it's a nice solid surface. There we go. You can press down on it as well. It helps with the bonding of the solids. And then just kind of go like that, kind of side to side with a little bit of force, a little bit of weight. Press down on it. Kind of get it. Kind of get it good. There we go. Now look at it. After we folded it over twice, and you can see now it's starting to stiffen up a little bit more right here, especially right here. You don't have like this right here. It looks like more of a crater. Over here is a nice solid surface. You can keep going on and on until you feel comfortable with it. But first things first, let's put this to the side because that's cool. If you do want to do other things too, you can take, like, for instance, your fork. This one, I'll pull this off here. Just scrape it, kind of make it into an even slab. Kind of break off the sides that weren't as solidified as the rest. And then you can take that and transfer it into the other one where you're going to use your mold, just so you can have extra materials to work with. And don't worry about the crumbles. They'll eventually start to come together, as we just saw with this. Ta-da! look at it. It's so beautiful. Purple. So now we're gonna let that be. Eventually, if you're done with this step and you're done with this portion of it, what you want to do is kind of fold it under and get it so that it's not much parchment paper showing on its sides, so that you can get a nice crispy piece of plastic. So fold it under on the sides, and then fold it under on the other sides, and all the other sides except for the top side. Boom. There we go. So now you should have something like this. Right up on the palm. There we go. Something like this. So this is our eventually piece of plastic. So you take this, take your second piece of parchment paper, and you want to put that into the oven on say about 350 or 400 for about 30 minutes. And what that's going to do is evaporate all the water out of it and remove any excess vinegar that may be in there, and the solids are going to fuse together and bind themselves. Bonding time. All right, here we go. Now we're going to transition to our next part. Get out another piece of parchment paper. If you have it, if you don't, you can just be using a paper plate or a plastic plate or a ceramic plate. All right. So just transfer all your molds there. Set this to the side for recycling. Put this, and just bring all your molds, mold pieces. Y'all can see this too. Nope, those are body good. Still got some over here, so waste not, want not. Even though it's gonna be a little smelly, so let's damp it out. Damp. Here we go. Now, time to get hands dirty. Just kind of pick it up, put it in your hand. Pick it in your hand, kind of roll it into balls to kind of clump up all the little pieces. Kind of roll it into a little mound so you can pinch it. So now you can squeeze. Your hand's gonna smell like vinegar for a little bit, but that's okay. It's good to kind of squeeze out the vinegar. You can wash your hands afterwards, of course. So now, just kind of press it. You can see some of the drip coming out in my fingers. There's a little bit of moisture from the water, from the milk, and even our vinegar that we use to separate out our protein, our curds from our whey. There we go. All right, so now we have one blob, if you would. So you can take this, break it down into two, break it down into three, depending on the size of your mold. My mold is relatively large, so I'm going to not use it because I don't have as much solid, because I'm splitting my two up. And again, use this same ratio. If you want to use more milk, just add the same amount of vinegar. So 4 tablespoons to 400 milliliters. 4 tablespoons of vinegar, that is, to 400 milliliters of milk. So now we have our molds. There's 1, there's 2. Now this, you can kind of press it down. I'm going to do kind of like squares or blobs, or kind of like just press it and mold it. Something similar to that. Kind of little rocks, if you would. Or craters. Yeah, let's call them craters. Or mounds. No, mounds is better, because a crater would have a lot of holes. Well, it does. It's porous. It's porous, which means there's water that could go through it. And another one. This one, let's do, since this one's kind of like a squarish shape, let's do this one kind of like a, let's do this kind of long, cylindrical-ish. See if I can do that. So what you're going to do is just kind of press it, mold it, and shape it with your fingers. Kind of like Play-Doh, or kind of like clay. before we put it in the urn. So this one, we're gonna call this one a log. Yeah, like a mini log. Yeah, this one's kind of like a log, miniature log. Boom. So I'll pick that up and show you. Boom. This is our log. A stump on a log. Log. Take that, sit that there next to your mound. Alright. The last one, let's get a little fancy. So I'm gonna try to do a heart with this one. Alright, so alright, let's do a ball. Kind of like a mound. But more like a mound with a point. There, a pointy mound at the bottom. And then kind of shape it along the sides, give it that curve. That curve appeal at the side. Alright, well, let's kind of get it now. Let's take our fork and scrape away. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Scrape, 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 scrape. You can take more and put it kind of like on top. Like that. And to the other side, scrape, 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 scrape. As much of a heart as I can, at least. Let's do our middle insertion. This is kind of sorry, but alright, just kind of push down there now. Alright, let's do this. I think I'm almost there. Boom! Check it out. A little love for you. Look at that heart. A little purple heart for you. Alright, now what we want to do is, lost a little love. Lost a little love. I got that love back though. I got that love back. Yep. Alright, here we go. So the heart got his love back. We got our log and we got our mound and we have our let's call this a sheet or a sheet of plastic. So we got that. Cool. We don't want to break our sheet in half. Piece of paper. Alright. So now what we want to do is take these and we are going to transfer them into the oven. We want to bake them for about 30 minutes at roughly 400 degrees. Just kind of keep your eye on them. Remember, we're removing all the liquid, evaporating all the water, vinegar, and we're binding and fusing these solids, our casein protein that we had in our liquid. All right, we are back. So you can see now, after being in the oven, this is a little brown on top, more than likely because of the food coloring and the increased heat, so that I can make it faster. Pop my heat up to about 450, just to make this a little bit faster. You do not have to use the oven if you do not want this browning sensation, if you would. If you did decide to use food coloring. If you didn't use food coloring, you can, at this point, paint them. So if you didn't use the oven or no food coloring at the same time, you can start to paint them. The process for them to dry usually takes about 2 days. Overnight, the next day, you should see some or feel some type of more rigid substance. I just threw it in the oven to make this process a little bit faster. Try it out at home to see if you can get yours to solidify overnight. It actually makes for a better product. Here's this one right here. This one on the back. Try to pull this off. Here we go. Boom. See? There's this one. This one is still a little bit soft and moist on the backside, so all this would do is just sit in the open air and it will dry out and it'll become stiffer, more hard. And remember, the more that you have, the more actual material that you have packed in tight. It's all about how tight you pack your mixture after you separate it, because the better that you pack it, the better that you'll have a material. And I'll crack that a little bit there. See how that is right there? Boom. There we go. So this right here over here is a little bit thinner. This right here is a little bit more thicker. That's why it's still a little bit moist. But if you listen, hear that? Crack, 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 crack. That's because on the outside it's stiff. Crumble, crumble, crumble. All right, thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. Hope you all enjoyed today's experiment. Make sure we are practicing safe science. Also, remain curious. Be researching everything that you do not know. Also, research different types of other methods of this experiment. There's all different types of ways you can do this. Have fun exploring and be safe. See you next time. Peace.